parliamentary procedure and to uphold the rule of law.
It's been a chaotic 2 months in PNG politics, starting with the exodus of senior ministers and the Deputy Prime Minister to the opposition. If you were writing a book, that was the first chapter. The second would have been the 2 sets of legal interpretations the opposition sought from the Supreme Court. First was the election of James Marape as Prime Minister. The second was whether the Speaker, Job Pomat, had the legal right to override his deputy's decision and the parliamentary majority vote to adjourn to the 1st of December. The court has ruled on both matters. Both the opposition and the government are now preparing to take the action from the courts and the camps to Parliament in a few hours' time.
I think it's a challenge that the judiciary over the decades, during my term as a judge as well, and in my tenure as Chief Justice, we had issues of very sensitive political nature come before us. And so I think the judiciary is resilient. The judges understand the magnitude of the responsibilities vested in them by this Constitution, by our founding fathers who designed it, to vest the ultimate interpretive jurisdiction in the judiciary.
Today's decision by the Supreme Court is very, very clear that the Parliament must resume, and it must proceed with integrity, and it must proceed with a lot of fairness in its proceedings. That is why the Speaker's decision on the 16th of November was wrong and illegal, and court has found that to be the case.
The second ruling by the Supreme Court on the reference filed by the former PM, Peter O'Neill, is the greatest influencer of tomorrow's events onward. O'Neill, through his lawyers, sought clarification from the Supreme Court, arguing that the Speaker could not recall Parliament unilaterally after the majority had voted to adjourn. The Speaker's lawyers said he acted within his jurisdiction, which is Parliament, and he made the right decision. The 5-man bench led by Chief Justice Gibbs Salika found that the Speaker was indeed in contempt of Parliament. In short, the majority agreed to adjourn. He went against it on his own. The Supreme Court then issued orders effectively pressing the reset button on everything that happened on the 16th and 17th of November when Parliament was recalled. The 5-man bench declared that the Speaker's actions were unlawful and in contempt of Parliament. The session called on the 17th of November was invalid and ineffective. The budget passed on the 17th was also invalid, unconstitutional and ineffective.
What is happening in a short history, 45 years compared to many established democracies over centuries, is that it is evolving. Our Constitution is still being tested out, and the judiciary has been charged with the responsibility by our founding fathers to be the arbiter.
What I do when I write is I don't predict anything.
Michael Kabuni, who teaches political science at the University of Papua New Guinea, has been writing about the possible scenarios, the effects of the Supreme Court rulings, and the decision made by the Speaker.
So the first scenario is that the opposition will block the budget and then submit a notice for motion of vote of no confidence. The Parliament meets the next day. The Speaker advises the Parliament that there is a motion for vote of no confidence. They adjourn for 1 week, come back, and then elect a Prime Minister. The second scenario is Parliament meets on Monday. The government votes to replace the Permanent Private Business Committee. So it is this committee that vets the vote of no confidence motion. So they decide whether there is enough argument to change the Prime Minister. And then they look at procedural things like, did they follow the procedures, naming an alternate Prime Minister, having 12 members of Parliament sign the notice. So they vet these things. Now what happens is if government MPs dominate that committee, they can frustrate it by delaying it. If opposition MPs dominate that committee, they can do that basically in 1 day.
Any budget delay has long-term implications on all fronts, and while the focus has been on who becomes Prime Minister on the floor, the budget needs to be passed in order for government to function, and for businesses to work with a level of certainty.
When we talk about instability, most people think about the Prime Minister. They don't think about the number of ministers that are changed. Every government that comes in changes ministers. Even the governments sometimes change departmental heads. And if you have another government coming in with different expectation, it will change whatever policies you had. It will affect the implementing agencies. So instability does not only affect the position of the Prime Minister. It affects the Prime Minister, the ministers of the government, departmental heads, line agencies, businesses who have projected their business based on what the last government's policies were.
By convention of the Westminster system, any Prime Minister that doesn't have the confidence of the House should resign. But like many things in Papua New Guinea, only parts of the system are used when and wherever convenient. History has shown that only in rare occasions have Prime Ministers resigned according to convention. And that leaves only one option, and that's to test the numbers on the floor.